know.
Happy birthday, Neil.
Hello, book nerds. My name is Megan.
I'm Deborah.
And I'm Lance.
And this is The Middle Ground. Okay, so you may have some questions, like, what is this? Well, we love books, and we're going to talk about them. And you also might be wondering, why are these nerds wearing party hats? Well, today...
Because they're so fashionable. Everyone's going to be wearing them in the future.
Today, we're going to be talking about the works of one of my favorite authors, Neil Gaiman. And since his birthday is coming up on November 20th, we're kind of going with a party vibe. So, happy birthday, Neil! Woohoo!
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so if you don't know who Neil Gaiman is, he is an English author who writes comics and novels, short stories, children's books, and has done some screenwriting as well. Many of his works have been turned into movies or TV shows. So you may have enjoyed his work and not even realized it.
For instance, Megan and I together watched, well, sort of binge-watched Good Omens, which was a wonderful series available. I think you can still view it if you want. If you've not yet binged-watched it, you certainly can. And there was a movie a few years ago called Stardust.
Probably a lot of years now. It's been,
You know, when you get older, a few years is all relative.
Indeed.
Anyway, it is also a fun movie that you might want to check out. And there are other things that you might want to check out just for their campiness, like...
there's a small screen adaptation of Neverwhere, one of his novels.
It's an older BBC for television.
Yeah.
And if you enjoy the older campy Doctor Who's, you'll probably also enjoy this.
And he also wrote a few episodes for Doctor Who. I really enjoy his books. I think I really enjoy fantasy as a genre, but his fantasy sort of belongs to that fantastic realism genre. There's like our world, it's the real world, but then there's this underlying magical component. So like in American Gods, one of his novels, and the main character, which was also turned into a TV show, the main character discovers he's a demigod and that there are the old gods and they're still alive, but they're around the U.S.
Like in rest homes?
Yeah,
Is there one?
some
Is
of
there
them
one in
might
Rest Home?
be, yeah.
They're kind of like
I read
in
it
hiding,
a few years
like
ago.
they're not as powerful and they're kind of...
Rest home would probably be a good place to hide.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's been a while since I've read that one, and the show, I know, deviates from the source material, but anyway. But yeah, so, and then in Good Omens,
The book is always better, so big surprise.
It's true. So in Good Omens, the angel and a demon are working together to try to stop the apocalypse. That's the premise of that. It's super fun. It's hilarious. So yeah, it's fantastical, but it's still in our world. Like, the angel owns a bookstore, the demon drives a 26 Bentley. In Coraline, the family's new home opens into a mysterious mirror world and it's kind of a dark... It's a children's book, but it's dark side of things, which is, again, most of his work is like that. Not all.
It's a book for creepy children.
Yeah.
So if you're living in a perfectly normal, thank you very much, house and suddenly find out you're a wizard and are transported to a world hidden beneath London, or if you're eating a strangely colored chicken nugget in your favorite fast food restaurant and are suddenly whisked away to a world of terrific abdominal pain.
I think that last one sounds a little more like food poisoning than fantastic realism, but yeah, Harry Potter would be considered magical realism, but it would be better to show this book, Books of Magic, if you can see. It's called Books of Magic, which was by Neil Gaiman, so, but that's kind of another... That could be a whole other video.
It's not Harry Potter because he rides a skateboard.
Yeah. The book we're talking about, going to focus mostly on... He has a lot of work, as we said, but this book is one that we read and wanted to discuss today, The Ocean at the End of the Lane. So this book is kind of about remembering childhood, and the narrator is an unnamed narrator, and he's leaving the wake of a funeral he's attending and finds himself driving down the lane near his childhood home, and he finds himself going to this pond and staring in it, and it's a pond that he was told was once an ocean. He remembers that, and that sort of triggers a bunch of these memories from when he was 7 years old, and so then it flashes back to that point in time. So he has sort of these repressed memories, and it's not really a surprise they'd be repressed, that there's some very weird and terrible things that happen to such a small boy in this book that are sometimes hard to read. I know, Debbie, you really struggled with that when reading this.
I also had a hard time watching Coraline. I've not tried to read that book, but I made numerous attempts to read this book and had to stop, because if you have experienced any sort of childhood trauma, or if you currently work with children who have been abused or neglected, it's very troubling to read a story about a small boy who is not only not protected by his parents, but he's also harmed by one of his parents. So it was hard for me to read, and I think it might be for other people who have similar experiences. I would recommend rather that you read Good Omens or Stardust or American Gods.
And for anybody who's not Gen X, it's just kind of like, it's a little bit like growing up Gen X. You're kind of on your own. You don't really talk to adults because they're, in one way or another not involved. But if you have experienced trauma,
there's
maybe
a trigger warning there.
And maybe take a pass on this one.
Yeah. So why should you read it? The world, it really is a fantastic place, and that's kind of what you get from the narrator in this, like when he's remembering the way he viewed the world as a child. So that's especially true when we're children. We see it as this amazing, fantastical place. And
imagine a goose.
Yeah.
Like if you saw a goose and you'd never seen a goose before. You got this chicken with a snake neck. Like, what the heck? And plus, they're like demonic. Like if a goose was like 500 times larger.
That'd be terrifying for sure.
I mean, if a house cat.
Oh, yeah.
We'd be all
Gaiman
dead.
wrote about that in, that's a whole other... We could talk about that maybe in another video. He wrote about, like, cats being huge and, anyway, taking over the world. But, if you know, you know. Like, if you've read that. But, it's that sort of wonder that Gaiman captures with this, like, viewing the world through that lens of a child. And it's something that we kind of forget as we grow up. So, for example, the quote in the introduction,
"It was only a duck pond out at the back of the farm. It wasn't very big. Letty Hemstock said it was an ocean, but I knew that was silly. She said they'd come here across the ocean from the old country. Her mother said that Letty didn't remember properly, and it was a long time ago. And anyway, the old country had sunk. Old Mrs. Hemstock, Letty's grandmother, said they were both wrong, and that the place that had sunk wasn't the really old country. She said she could remember the really old country. She said the really old country had blown up."
So whether it was the mud pie that you tried to actually eat, or the pretend fish in the bathtub that you really thought were fish, the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, the monster under the bed, there were so many things that you really believed were true. And I'm going to ask you guys for comments, but what did you guys, like all of those were actually mine. Like for real, I did in fact taste a mud pie. I don't know how old I was,
like
but
I thought, chocolate.
Oh no, I was like, well it's a pie. Like, why not? I don't think, in my defense, I wasn't over 15 or 16.
That's good.
I remember being terrified as a small child that if I was still sitting on the toilet when it was flushed, that I would end up down in the sewer. And it's completely illogical now. Like, there's no physical way, but at the time, I thought there would be some kind of magical suction and I would be gone.
At the time, it's a legit fear.
Oh, like
mine. So mine was the city pool when I was little had, at the deep end of the pool, they painted on the bottom an orca, a killer whale at the bottom, and I was terrified to try to go off the diving board or jump in or even like go near. Like I would kind of like peek at it, and I remember that being like really freaked out and thinking that that thing was real and going to eat me if I went in there.
So you only went in the baby pool?
Yeah, or stayed on like the other end of the pool, you know, like where the shallow end.
Because it was too shallow, he couldn't swim there. Yeah.
No, it makes total sense. The killer whale only stays because that rope that blocked off the deep end, he can't go past that rope.
Okay. It was a magical barrier of protection.
So as adults, we believe that the world is all leftover burritos and no pie. It all is all bills and advertisements and no postcards from Europe. This book is a good reminder that the world is still fantastic, even if we've grown dull. Another beautiful thing about the book is the manner that Gaiman is able to focus the reader's attention on each of the senses to bring to mind familiar experiences that we've forgotten and balance those with something larger. For example, what about our experience of finding comfort in food?
Here's another quote from the book. I do not miss childhood, but I miss the way I took pleasure in small things, even as greater things crumbled. I could not control the world I was in. Could not walk away from things or people or moments that hurt. But I found joy in the things that made me happy. The custard was sweet and creamy in my mouth. The dark, swollen currants in the spotted dick were tangy, and the cake thick, chewy blandness of the pudding. And perhaps I was going to die that night, and perhaps I would never go home again. But it was a good dinner, and I had faith in Letty Hempstock.
You just said spotted dick on the internet.
Some, uncultured Americans laugh at that, but,
It's still, I mean, it just...
Our friends across the pond know what it is, and then it's not anything bad.
Yeah, but
it's
still.
It's a food. So, yeah, I don't know. That makes sense to me, like, having a good meal. Like, yeah, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna die, but this food is delicious, at least.
So what
That's relatable, I think.
So what are the simple things that take your minds off your troubles? You can throw that in the comments. What about you guys?
I like to sit on the front porch with a cup of coffee and watch the sunlight playing through the leaves in the trees.
I mean, food, like mentioning the food. I feel like that's, everybody has that comfort food, I guess. Also, like, I'm tactile, I like to, like, soft things, the cat, or soft blanket, or something like, I don't know.
I'm yawning, so sleep. But, too much sleep isn't necessarily a good thing. Also, a walk outside, if it isn't miserable. This is Kansas, so there are many days when a walk outside is not very comforting. But, like, today was a gorgeous fall day. Debbie had a marvelous time wading through leaves that were...
They were crunchy.
16 inches deep.
They were crunchy.
That's a lot of leaves.
And finally, one other reason to read this book. There are actually lots. But this book is one of the best we've ever seen. It raises the possibility of our own inability to perceive and really wrap our minds around the uncanny or the supernatural. Gaiman does a brilliant job in showing the near amnesiac confusion of the main character at the close of the story.
Yeah, so another quote, there was another question I needed answered. I said, "Why did I come here?" She looked at me as if it were a trick question. "The funeral," she said. "You wanted to get away from everyone and be on your own. So first of all, you drove back to the place you'd lived in as a boy. And when that didn't give you what you'd missed, you drove to the end of the lane and you came here, like you always do."
Well, thanks for joining us as we discussed The Ocean at the End of the Lane. Please tune in again for future episodes where we plan to discuss some of the other works of Neil Gaiman, such as his children's books and his nonfiction works. And please, in the comments, if you've read this book, you can tell us your thoughts about the book, or let us know other authors or other books you might like us to discuss on future episodes.
And in the meantime, don't forget, stop by your local library, because one of the brilliant things about the local library is it is free for you as a taxpayer, and they are actually one of the government entities that are honestly here to help. Imagine that to be true.
Wow, shocking.
Until next time, we will meet you in the middle.
Happy birthday, Neil!
I have, noisemaker dysfunction.
I'm hoping I didn't bump this. And,
Okay.
I don't know.
Hits you in the forehead.
I just can't even look at you right now. You're scolding me for saying things, and he is like literally